You're watching AWB TV.
Coming up on Capitol Focus, a historic stimulus package has passed Congress and is on its way to Washington State. We'll hear from state legislators about how to spend it. We also meet an ambitious team of college students working to increase civility and bipartisanship in politics. This and the latest news from Week 9 of the legislative session. Capitol Focus starts right now.
Welcome to Capitol Focus. A closer look at the issues that are most relevant to Washington employers.
Hello, I'm Dave Maston. Welcome to Capitol Focus, where we bring you the highlights of this year's legislative session. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. Governor Jay Inslee announced the long-awaited move to Phase 3 of Washington's economic reopening. The governor says that Phase 3 will start in a couple weeks, March 22nd to be exact. The entire state will take the next step and open to 50% capacity. Now, Washington will be the 49th of 50 states to open to this level. California is still a step behind. This announcement came just days after AWB gathered employers and local chambers of commerce to meet with some of the governor's top economic advisors. In addition to encouraging the move to Phase 3, the group advocated for a long-term roadmap to full economic reopening.
Short of reopening, the other thing that we need is a clear plan, something to count on, something to look forward to, something to work towards.
The administration did not address a long-range roadmap, but stay tuned as AWB and others keep pushing in that direction. Big dollars are coming to Washington. The new federal stimulus will send over $7 billion to local and state governments. It also will send an extra $1.9 billion to schools, and on top of that, direct payments to individuals, new tax credits, and other programs. This is a one-time only lump sum of money, and employers are encouraging our state budget writers to focus on one-time only investments and resist the urge to create new ongoing programs that will need new dollars down the road. We'll hear more about this later in the show. The Washington State Senate has passed Senate Bill 5096. This proposal would create the state's very first capital gains tax. Now, budget analysts say our tax revenues are growing. They've grown by over 10% over the last budget. And on top of state revenue, we also have billions in federal dollars from past and new stimulus bills. So even with the most significant increase in state funding in recent history, we still have some saying we need more taxes. We also have some saying we do not. The Seattle Times called the capital gains tax, and I quote, ill-conceived legislation. The Times went on to say that this tax increase is simply, and I quote again, taxation for taxation's sake. Please contact AWB's Tommy Gantz to learn more. A low-carbon fuel proposal has cleared the State House of Representatives and is being considered by the Senate. House Bill 1091 requires a 20% reduction of carbon in fuel by the year 2035. Now, California adopted a similar plan 12 years ago, and the results show that the California program has had limited environmental benefit, but has added about 20 cents per gallon to the price of gas. This cost-benefit analysis leads many employers to say it's a lose-lose proposal. Please contact AWB's Mike Ennis for more information. A bipartisan proposal to double the state's manufacturing jobs has cleared the House on a 96-0 vote. House Bill 1170, the Building Economic Strength Through Manufacturing Act, is sponsored by Republican Representative Matt Behnke and Democrat Representative Dave Paul. The proposal would also aim to double the number of women and minority-owned manufacturing firms, and it also calls for state funding for manufacturing research and development. Please contact AWB's Tommy Gantz for more details. Coming up next, President Biden has signed the latest installment in federal stimulus. What does this mean for Washington State? We'll check in with our federal experts after the break.
A
Alafia works to alleviate poverty and promote gender equality. We do that through the fair trade of sustainable resources in West Africa.
Private enterprise alleviates poverty.
Using a business to make money to help other people.
Our mission is heavily impacted by excessive regulations or taxation. And when business is difficult, it means that you can't grow, and you can't grow, it means you can't hire people. We believe that every human being deserves to have an opportunity.
Here at Patriot Plumbing, Heating and Cooling, we do plumbing, electrical, and heating and air conditioning.
We have 20 employees on staff, plus my business partner and myself.
When we have employees come work for us, it's not just a paycheck, but it's their family we're taking care of. And so obviously health insurance is a huge part of that.
We are nothing without our employees, and with AWB's Health Choice, it gives us the ability to offer big benefits for a small business.
Welcome back to Capital Focus. And now, the close-up.
President Biden has signed the latest stimulus package. In addition to direct payments to individuals, Congress is also sending Washington State $7 billion for local and state governments. I'm here with Amy Anderson, our Government Affairs Director for Federal Issues. Amy, thank you for joining us. We've got a lot of money coming to Washington State. Why don't you tell us about it?
Thank you, Dave. Good to be here again. And yes, federal lawmakers have approved several aid packages since the coronavirus pandemic swept the country last year. The K&L Gates law firm in Washington, D.C. has tracked this extraordinary response from the beginning. We're joined now by Tim Peckinpah, a partner with K&L Gates, who is also AWB's federal lobbyist, representing us in Washington, D.C. Tim, welcome to Capital Focus.
Well, Amy, thank you very much for the invitation. Great to be here. I know your focus is mostly in Olympia, where it should be, but I'm focused here in Washington, D.C. And obviously, we're very focused on what passed just yesterday with President Senator, this $1.9 trillion package, the American Rescue Package, on top of $4 trillion that was put through Congress last year. So combined, that's a significant economic benefit for the country, injecting a lot of support and aid to respond to this pandemic. So it's a very, very historic time here in Washington, D.C.
Tim, much of the news on this new bill has been focused on direct payments to Americans, but there's also $360 billion in direct aid to state and local governments. What's coming to Washington State and what's going to cities and counties?
Well, Amy, it's a lot of money. You're right, coming to Washington State. For state and local, probably about $7.1 billion is our best guess. They're still doing the calculations. That number is significant. This can be very helpful for state and locals. The money will probably be divided between individual cities, large cities, small cities, plus counties as well. In addition, beyond the state and local funding, there's funding as well for education, particularly K through 12 and higher ed, probably about $3 billion plus in that account. And also for childcare, very important priority for the state and for working moms across the country. And that is to ensure we have adequate programs to ensure folks can go to work and provide care for their children. And there's also a significant tax credit for those who have children. In fact, this is being thought of by many as the most progressive part of the bill that will go a long way toward reducing childhood poverty in our country.
One of the major impacts of the pandemic on Washington state employers is the increase in unemployment taxes due to unemployment claims from business closures. Can any of the funds flowing into Washington state from the American Rescue Plan be used to replenish the UI Trust Fund?
Great question. We don't know for sure. Probably the answer is yes, but we're still doing some research on that. The language is pretty unclear, and we're still kind of going through it. It's a very large bill. It just got signed yesterday, as you know. So the CARES Act that was passed last year did have some flexibility where funds could be used to replenish state UI accounts. So it's a possibility. Hopefully it can go that way. We just don't know for sure.
As you are aware, AWB, with its partners from the ports, cities, and counties, published an infrastructure report showing Washington state's infrastructure needs, including energy, water, communications, and transportation. Are there funds available in the relief package to address these needs?
Yeah, first of all, that was a good report, and I think it was a very important contribution in laying out the priorities for infrastructure. Probably not, because the bill that's been signed is very focused on the virus itself, and you have to have programs that are specific, like in the healthcare sector, that are providing immediate funding to deal with the immediate need caused by the pandemic. There'll be other legislation coming along, I'm sure, it can be very useful for doing infrastructure, but unless the actual project has a direct connection to the pandemic probably not be used for that purpose.
With the passage of the third relief package, what do you see as the next effort Congress and the Biden administration will address?
Yeah, great question. The next big effort will be infrastructure. And this is the pivot to go from the immediate relief provided by the pandemic legislation. Now they're going into stimulate the economy mode. And the new bill will be very focused on clean technology, climate change initiatives, but also obviously just straight ordinary infrastructure, roads, bridges, broadband, trying to create economic activity, job creation, et cetera, for various projects. There is significant pent-up demand throughout the entire country for doing infrastructure, and this is the chance to do it. This will be a massive bill, $2 trillion or more, and it's going to be the next big effort for us to be involved working with our congressional allies to ensure that Washington State can get the funds we need to get the long overdue infrastructure projects finally completed.
Well, we certainly have a lot of demand in Washington State, so look forward to working with the congressional delegation on that. So Tim, from your perspective, has the need to address economic recovery for the country produced a more collaborative relationship amongst our Washington, D.C. policymakers?
I wish the answer were yes, but probably not. That may change, but based upon the first big bill, it was a partisan process, and they chose the reconciliation means to move legislation, which means you only have to get 51 votes in the Senate, not the usual 60. And that led to a very partisan process. The results are obvious. I mean, the bill passed the House with no Republicans support, passed the Senate with no Republican support. In fact, only one Democrat voted no. So it was clearly a partisan vote on both sides. And that was just, again, a product of the process they chose to move the legislation. I might add, though, that our congressional delegation, despite voting differently, they worked well together. They were trying very hard to provide a unified point of view on behalf of the entire state. But the bill as a whole became a much more partisan process. We'll see if the infrastructure bill, for example, that's the next big bill, will follow reconciliation or a more bipartisan approach.
Well, certainly a lot going on in the other Washington. And Tim, thank you so much for all you do to keep Washington employers informed. It's been great having you today.
Thank you very much.
So, Dave, one thing I would like to emphasize is that this is one-time funding, and it really does need to be directed towards the impacts of the COVID pandemic. We cannot create any new programs, any new taxes. I understand you've talked with some state legislators on their thoughts around how we use this money that's coming into the state.
I just recently talked to Senator Derek Stanford, who's the Vice Chair of Gaming and Commerce in the Senate. And he's going to echo what we heard from Tim regarding unemployment. Let's take a look at what he has to say.
Great, thank you.
So we're looking at the details now to determine whether some of those funds could be used for rate relief in our unemployment insurance system. If so, then there is definitely interest in helping some of the businesses that have been hit hard by COVID-related UI claims. As you know, we have passed legislation to help reduce the premium increases for 2021, but we also need to address the issue of businesses that have seen big jumps in their rate classes.
Dave, Tim also talked about money being brought into the state for our education system, necessary to get our kids back into school and back into the learning process. I understand you talked to Senator Wellman about this.
Yeah, Senator Wellman, chair of the Early Learning and K-12 Education Committee in the Senate. Talked to her. We actually focused on K-12, which should be getting about $1.9 billion out of this fund, out of the feds. And so I talked to her about some of the ideas that she thinks we should direct that funding. Let's go to that now and hear what she has to say.
We are very concerned about all the issues surrounding schools right now, and we're really focusing on the fact that 295 districts have each experienced this COVID crisis differently. And so we think flexibility is quite important, but we're focused around three major things, and one is stabilization, one is recovery, and acceleration. Well, what I mean by stabilization has to do with the emotional trauma that we've been through. And this is particularly true of the teachers that I talk to, as well as the students. For the teachers, it's been really challenging when every day they're trying to do the very best that they can for their kids. And in some cases, they know they're not reaching them. They're not giving them that support that they need. And that's true of the children, where sometimes the frustration of just trying to deal with their computers being able to see their teacher. In some cases, they haven't seen the teacher for quite a while. And so we need to get our feet back under us. We need to feel we're back in the groove and we're really ready to learn and ready to teach. And we've got what we need to do that. By recovery, I mean that there are children that have had trouble really dealing with online education. Some have benefited, but some really are going to need to have an assessment. Where are they? What have they missed? In some cases, the internet wasn't working for them, and it was just so frustrating that they gave up. So we've got to figure out where kids are and what they need to get them back up to speed.
So Amy, any final words?
Yeah, we just need to be cognizant of the fact that this is a lot of funding coming into Washington State. And it's one-time funding. It is meant to address the effects and impacts of the COVID pandemic. We need to treat it as such so that we can get Washington State into economic recovery.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next on Capital Focus, students at Washington State University are working hard on a special project to bridge the partisan divide. AWB President Chris Johnson will tell us more after the break.
We can fly where you want to, we can leave your house behind. But if your friends don't mask, and why don't they mask? Well, they won't fly this airline.
You can fly if you want to, cause we do safety right. We have air that's clean and disinfectant machines zapping germs like an arcade space fight. And we dance to the dance, do the dance. Everybody wash some hands. Do the dance, we're always wearing a mask. Do the dance, do the dance. No, seriously, please wash your hands. Do the dance, do the dance. Have the filters cleaning commence. Alaska Safety Dance. Alaska Safety Dance. Alaska Safety Dance.
Welcome back to Capital Focus. And now, Washington Problem Solvers.
Welcome back. I'm AWB President Chris Johnson. This week's Problem Solvers once again highlights those that work across the partisan divide to move our state forward. And consistent with the AWB mission to be a unifying voice for economic prosperity throughout the state, this week's group is truly inspirational. Washington for Civility is a student-led digital public awareness campaign that aims to counter incivility and create open spaces for conversation. This effort educates and equips Washington State University students, community members, and elected officials with the resources they need to create civil conversations and strengthen our democracy. Joining me now are 4 students from the WSU Edward R. Murrow College of Communications: Emily Harris, Sherwin Francis, Melina Ernst, and Stephanie Ludahl. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Emily, let's start with you. What's this campaign all about?
So Washington for Civility is our campaign, and we're striving to promote, educate, and equip all of Washington to have these civil conversations. We've been working on this campaign for PRSA abatement competition. And for that, we just finished our implementation stage. But even though that's over, we still really want everyone to focus on this cause, find those common grounds, and still possibly take our pledge.
Emily, how did you begin by defining civility?
So we actually started this whole project in August, and that's when we started our whole research phase. And we've been working on this for a while, and we really are backing this whole and stand by everything that we've been doing. And civility was the hardest part of doing all of this. Is there are so many ways to describe civility and incivility.
Sherwin, let's go to you. You're the numbers person here. What does the data, what does your research show you so far?
Yeah, so for this campaign, we did primary research on both elected officials and WC students across all campuses. And one of the most interesting data points that we got was 82% of WC students surveyed thought they felt verbally attacked for voicing their opinions. And that's consistent with both elected officials who, in that 88% of them felt verbally attacked for voicing their opinions, which we think is a really high number, especially when you consider students on campuses where you're focusing on education and voicing opinions and exploring different perspectives.
What else? Hey, Sherwin, let's stay with you for a moment. That was the top line data piece. Anything else jump out at you from the survey that you did with college students?
Yeah, so majority of college students do think civility is a major issue in our nation and in our state. And we found that majority of them also do want to get involved in our campaign or get involved in participating in events to educate themselves, given that they have the right resources to counter incivility. So it's just that they don't have the opportunity or the resources to engage in these conversations. And when provided, they're happy to participate in any degree.
And Melina, let's go to you. Tell us about the website and the digital outreach of this campaign, if you would.
So our website is WAFOR Civility, Washington for Civility. And our website has a breakdown of an about page, which we highlight our goals of our campaign. And our main initiative for our campaign is a pledge. And when anyone lands on our pledge site, they're able to select whether they're a WC student, a community member, or an elected official. And by pledging, they are attesting that they are best implementing the 4 civility keys that we created for our campaign. And these civility keys are to listen, acknowledge, empathize, and respect. And we developed those keys based on a survey that we gathered and conducted for WC students and elected officials.
Melina, why don't you give us that website once again?
That's WAFORcivility.com.
Outstanding. And Stephanie, I understand you're hosting live events with policymakers and community leaders already right here in Washington State.
Yeah, so we've done a number of events over Zoom. We just recently did an event with different political members, and it was a civility and politics panel. We had the mayor of Arlington, the mayor of Pullman, council member from Malden, Washington, Representative Banky, and we also had Carolyn Long, who is the Democratic nominee for Congress in the 3rd District. So they came from all different levels and just spoke about politics and what it means at different levels.
This is a great project. I got a couple follow-up questions for you all. Did you all know each other before you started this project? I'm just curious.
Sherwin and I did have a class together, but that's the only point any of us have known each other. Yeah.
And Melina, you're doing this 17 time zones away, as I understand it. In fact, at this time, the broadcast, we are at 3 o'clock in the morning where you are about.
Yes, it is 3:30 a.m. here in Japan.
It's early. Another follow-up question for the 4 of you. You had a chance to sit down with the president of WSU, Kirk Schultz. I'm curious, how did that go? What did he have to say?
It was great. He's been so supportive throughout this entire campaign. He had a lot of great notes and ideas of how he can help us, and his wife even joined in and is supporting us as well on social media. And we just really felt the CUG support in our community as well.
You know, as we talk about civility, I think, Emily, there's an article that you're in that talks about you have a roommate who has different views than you. Talk a little bit about your ability to put this into practice with your own roommate.
I've actually been doing this for a while, so all of our 4 keys I've been implementing into my life since I've been living here, and it's really played a big role into that. My roommate and I do have different political views, but we don't let that separate us, and that's how we find our common ground. We both disagree on very big topics, and we actually like doing this and sitting down, talking about these topics where we do disagree and why we do. And then at the very end of it, we find a common ground. We say, I agree with what you're saying, but this is my view, and I still love you.
What a great inspiration for all of us. Students, you're breaking ground for us. You're the first set of students of any kind to be on Capitol Focus, and we're so excited to have you with us today. Thank you for your leadership. It's important and probably more needed today than ever. Again, that website, and it's a great project, is WAForcivility.com. Good luck with the Bateman competition. We're going to be watching all of you closely to see how this turns out. And our future looks extremely bright with you at the helm. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now let's take a quick look at the AWB events calendar. This Thursday, our virtual lobby lunch continues. We'll hear from State Senator Steve Hobbs, chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. To register, please contact Leave Johnson at leavej@awb.org. Our popular HR and Employment Law webinar series continues on April 7th. This event will share the latest information on wage and hour laws and help your business stay in compliance. These webinars offer continuing education credits as well. Registration is now open for AWB's annual spring meeting. This year's event is scheduled for Wednesday, May 12th, and will be held virtually. This year's theme is spring training, and we'll take a look at the 2021 legislative session and offer expert analysis on all the major issues that impact Washington employers. Tonight, we close with brighter days. Literally, daylight saving time kicked in at 2 a.m. this morning, which means there'll be more time for kids to play outside and more opportunities for parents to enjoy better weather. Now, 2 years ago, Washington lawmakers passed legislation to make daylight saving time permanent. This was a bipartisan effort between Representative Marcus Riccelli of Spokane and Mike Steele of Chelan. But the federal government needs to take action too. Some U.S. senators have introduced the Sunshine Protection Act of 2021. This would keep our clocks from falling back in November. Supporters say staying in daylight saving time would also reduce car crashes, improve public health, and even reduce the number of robberies. So let's spring forward and stay that way. This is AWB's Capital Focus. I'm Dave Maston. Please be safe, be smart. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching AWB TV.